Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Wednesday, May the 21st, 2025, and today's topic, I'm going to call it drawing heads or using ink. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day and I use timers to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer and this video might take a while. We'll see. There's several topics I want to cover, but I don't want to rush. And yeah, there's just kind of a lot of ideas and information I'd like to convey. So to begin with, I'm going through my sketchbook, which I began in October of last year. And I got to the last page, but there's like these blank spaces that I can fill in. So this one was from October, and then I did some from like November, and then looks like some from this year. What I'd like to do is put at least one, I might just keep it at like 3 per row. But before we get into that, I wanted to go over like the different tools since it's called using ink. Part of my initiative, as I call it, is making use of the things that I have. So one of them is I'm organizing things. So my supplies, and I've got these pen grips. There was like 6 of them. I put it on different pens. It works pretty well on this Papermate felt tip pen, medium point. This is like a Bic Intensity. It needs to be pretty thin for this thing to fit, like the grip, but they actually are pretty comfortable to use. The other thing is today I'll be using like a ballpoint pen. There's like a zebra ballpoint pen. I'm just gonna use this. So yeah, you can fit it on like a ballpoint pen if you want. I think I'll probably use this chisel point. So these were from studies for the most part, meaning I looked at either reference or like construction. So this is like construction, and then this one was like from like my own like studies of like my own character. So one of the things I wanted to do, and just to kind of get started, is I'm going to use this ballpoint pen, which is kind of fun to use. Like that's what I used here with a mixture of other pens. They can be fun and they can kind of help with doodling and setting up drawings and like sketching and stuff. So part of this was a study. So like the AOS, or Art of Sedone Triad, has imagination, study, and style. So part of this was a study, meaning looking at reference and just studying, or like drawing heads and stuff. It was also like a style thing because of the pen and ink. It's probably easier just to do it than to explain it, but that's like the idea. So just to get warmed up, so I'm going to just draw like a head, but I'm going to change the perspective, like the angle. And I'm going to be pretty like loose about it. Because part of this is to, one, sort of show how to take like a study and just sort of come up with your own like version of it and stuff. So it's just that this is just kind of an idea, and also like a warm-up. So I'm just gonna draw like this head basically, but in a pretty simple way, because if I wanted to have like kind of more detail or have it look more specific, then I would have looked at something. But this is just kind of an example of how to use a ballpoint pen also. And it does work, like as far as you can draw characters this way, because that's really like the main thing for me, is just drawing different characters. So a ballpoint pen is kind of nice for like underdrawing. So for this kind of like style, it's good to know the forms and to kind of map out you have to be like kind of like decisive. Like it's good to kind of map out like the shadow shapes, especially for like pen. But that's what like the studies are for. Yeah, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. And I'm going to keep the lighting because this comes from like the lighting. So for example, I'm just going to map out where I want like the dark values to go. But in a like a 3/4 view. Again, it's also experimentation. And like I often say, you have to be willing to sort of make mistakes, which I'll talk about in a minute after this one. So I'm going to keep it loose and go for sort of like, so there's two different styles. Here was the crosshatchy kind of style, and then this was more kind of graphic, if you want to call it, which this one is so happen to be called graphic, and that's why I call it graphic. So this is a chisel point. You can extrapolate some of the lighting, but you don't have to try to make it look exactly like it, because it's also a style kind of thing. So I'm just gonna put in, keeping in mind the proportions. Like this would be like the darkest areas just to get started, because I do want it to look a little bit like the same person. It doesn't have to be. This is just an experiment. But so yeah, I'm sort of keeping it look like the same person. Although I know like it'd be better to look at reference to really kind of know. Like I could redraw this, but this one is sort of being made up right now. But yeah, I'm not going to try to make it look like the exact same person. Once I have an idea, I kind of need to just go with it. So this is kind of the outline, I think I'm going to say. And part of it is, yeah, just playing around with this chisel point. Instead of just going in like with this, which you could, but if you want to map it out a little bit more, you might want to just go back to the ballpoint, do this kind of thing. And then again, you can also look up reference. That this could be sort of the, just like the sketch. If you want to have a little bit more, look up reference for the details. So yeah, you can figure out like the forms and the shading, or it could just be like the look of it. Like that's not like a bad look. Now there's interesting highlights, which is, that's why I would look up reference, because for like the skin tone, there are interesting highlights. So yeah, I would either just stick with this. I mean, some of it, again, just to kind of get that look, you might want to start to do this. For that graphic look, this is just an idea. But this could almost be its own video, just how to render this. The other thing I wanted to go over was, again, because we're talking about using ink, is sometimes you can use a pen and then have the construction. I was just wanting to do that, and then go in and like fix the erase the construction lines. So it may take a few layers of this white paint, but it's just an example of what you can do. And if I were gonna do this, I would just go ahead and make it like a mixed media kind of thing. Like it'll look different. It'll look more like paint. Now, of course, you can scan it in and boost the contrast, and it would just look like black and white. So this is an option. It's also a way to fix mistakes, but it's also part of like a look. It's not bad. This is a Sharpie marker, paint marker. The other thing is I did a series about these. It's a model sheet for the head. I made a post where it has like a link to like the videos. I could have used this as reference, kind of the way that you can look at a photo and use it as reference. And then from that, you can kind of make up characters. So I recommend being able to just draw the head, but like this is also helpful. So these are ideas. And in this example, I'm actually going to use this character because I could draw this person over here, but I'm going to use this character partly because, so I wanted to make this kind of neutral, sort of like you can adapt the head form. Part of why I wanted to do that, and part of it is just I wanted to show like different ways. So in the previous one, I used like a ballpoint pen. In this one, I'm going to just use like the usual felt tip pen. Yeah, so just using like a base model, like a model sheet. So I'm going to draw this character. This can be helpful to just sort of get the look. Like, I mean, the idea is that you want to be able to redraw stuff like, pretty easily and not worry about it. So in a way, it's pretty similar to like with the ballpoint. And I'll just kind of adjust it. I'll keep it sketchy enough to where I can adjust it. Like with the shading. So for example, I'm kind of adjusting like the jawline and like the chin from what I think it might look like. And that's like the main thing before I would even think about like really like the shading, although this does give me some ideas. Like you can keep the lighting the same. So for example, kind of like it would end up being kind of like this. Like this side is sort of in shadow. And then of course like the features look a certain way. So part of it is I'm going off of that model sheet down there. It's just a starting point, and then afterwards you won't really need it. And it's helpful, especially if you're wanting to think a little bit more about like keeping the same character, so that you're not also like trying to draw the head correctly. So kind of like this. And then once you have this, then yeah, you can basically make it look more like the character. Just get the shapes. Like the eyebrow, the eye shape. Also where you think the shape of the nose, and also like how far in the eyes are, because that's different in people. And then like the obvious things are like the hair. And kind of the shape of the chin. Alright, I wanted to go over a little bit of how to do like this skin tone, because one, I'm practicing it and also might give you some ideas. But yeah, it's with the chisel point and then using like a ballpoint pen to do some of this blending. For further detail, you could also go in with one of these. But you just kind of take your time with it. Look up some reference. But it's pretty good practice. And so that way it can look kind of like that style. But yeah, I mean, it can be challenging to add the shading without turning it into like facial hair and whatnot. Part of it is like it's probably easiest just to kind of show you like an approach to it. So that's one way. Kind of just have to practice it. But yeah, that'll be it for today's daily sketching routine. I want to thank you for joining me, and if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep on sketching.